Hello, City of Orem employees. This is Carrie Rugg, Human Resources Manager for the city. I wanted to welcome you to this short informational video about the Family First Coronavirus Act as it pertains to employer-paid leave requirements. The Family First Coronavirus Act was signed into law March 18, 2020. The provisions of the Act go into effect April 1st and will end December 31st, 2020. The Act expanded EFMLA during this time period and added a new emergency sick leave requirement. Last week, I sent out an email with the Department of Labor's Employee Rights poster and an informational guide on how the expanded FMLA and emergency sick leave would work and how an employee can go about in applying for these leave types. If you missed this email, this information will also be available on Walter before April 1st. First, let's talk about expanded FMLA. During this presentation, I will also refer to this as EFMLA. Unlike traditional FMLA, expanded FMLA only applies to an employee who is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed or child care provider is unavailable for reasons related to COVID-19. This is the only qualifying reason an employee may qualify for expanded FMLA. Some items to note is, first, if you have the option to telework, you may not qualify for this. You must be employed with the city for at least 30 days. The first 2 weeks of emergency FMLA is not paid, but you may qualify for the new emergency sick leave for those first 2 weeks. Finally, before taking emergency FMLA, you must apply for it through Human Resources. The application form can be found on Walter. Now I will explain the new emergency sick leave that will go into effect April 1st. Emergency sick leave does not carry over from year to year and will not be available after December 31st, 2020. You are eligible for up to 2 weeks of emergency sick leave from the first date of hire. You must have a qualifying reason to take this leave. Finally, you must apply with HR using the form found on Walter before you can take emergency sick leave. There are 6 very specific reasons that you may qualify for emergency sick leave. First, the employee is subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. The governor's current Stay Safe, Stay Home directive is not a quarantine or isolation order, so this option, as of today, is not available to any Orem employees. The second qualifying reason is that the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19. The third qualifying reason is that the employee is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis. Fourth is that the employee is caring for an individual subject to the first or second qualifying reasons. Fifth is that the employee is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed or child care provider is unavailable for reasons related to COVID-19. As you'll remember, we discussed this provision during emergency FMLA. This same qualifying event would qualify you for both emergency sick leave and emergency FMLA if you were to qualify for these things. The sixth reason is that employee is experiencing any other substantially similar conditions specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services in consultation with the Secretaries of Labor and Treasury. For reasons 1, 2, and 3, employees are entitled to pay at their regular rate up to $511 a day or $5,110 in a 2-week period. Reasons 4, 5, and 6, an employee would be entitled to pay at 2/3 their regular rate, up to $200 a day and $2,000 over a 2-week period. Please take the time to familiarize yourself with these qualifying reasons, duration of leave available, and how your pay will be calculated. Now, I know this is unfamiliar and new to all of us, so let's take a look at some scenarios that will hopefully help you to understand when emergency sick leave and emergency FMLA may apply. Question: if I need to stay home with my child because their school is closed until May, do I use my sick leave bank, emergency sick leave, or expanded FMLA? The answer is you may be eligible to use all 3 types of leave, but only for a total of 12 weeks. Any of these types of leave can be used intermittently as needed. The first 2 weeks you may qualify for emergency sick leave. The remaining weeks you could apply for emergency FMLA at 2/3 your regular rate of pay. You may supplement the additional 1/3 using your accrued sick leave bank. Please note that you must still apply and be approved for these types of leave before you try to use them. For example, if you have a position that allows you to telework during this time, you would not qualify for any of this leave unless you didn't have enough work for your entire work week. For that instance, you would be able to supplement your hours worked with emergency sick leave for the first 2 weeks as needed. Next question, is all FMLA leave now paid moving forward? The answer to this is no. Paid leave for FMLA only applies to expanded FMLA leave. And if you remember, expanded FMLA requires that your qualifying reason is to care for a child whose school is closed because of COVID-19. All other FMLA qualifying leave will still follow the original guidelines, and you would need to supplement traditional FMLA leave with your accrued sick and vacation leave banks. Question, what documents do I need to give HR to qualify for emergency sick leave and/or expanded FMLA? The answer is both the expanded FMLA and emergency sick leave applications can be found on Walter. Question, can I choose to use emergency sick leave or expanded FMLA instead of teleworking? This answer depends if teleworking is offered and you voluntarily refuse to work from home, you would not qualify for expanded FMLA or emergency sick leave. If you are unable to telework due to your own COVID-19 related illness, you may still qualify for emergency sick leave, which is up to 2 weeks of paid time. However, you would not qualify for emergency FMLA because the event is not tied to a child being out of school because of COVID-19 closures. If you were to be sick past the 2-week emergency sick leave, you would need to use your sick leave bank for the remaining time you are out sick. Question, I've been out sick prior to April 1st. Do I qualify for emergency sick leave for dates in March? The answer is unfortunately no. Emergency sick leave will only be in effect from April 1st of 2020 to December 31st of this year. You may still use your accrued sick leave for that time. If you don't have enough accrued sick leave to cover the absence during this COVID-19 time only, you will be allowed to go negative in your sick leave bank. Next question. I'm a flex employee and therefore do not have any city benefits. I work 20 hours every week. My child is home because the schools are closed related to COVID-19. The department that I work for does not have any telework for me to do. Will I qualify for emergency sick leave and/or expanded FMLA April 1st, even though I don't have any other benefits with the city? I have worked for the city for 2 months. The answer to that is yes. After April 1st, you will qualify for 2 weeks emergency sick leave because you work 20 hours a week. You would receive 40 hours at 2/3 your regular rate of pay for those 2 weeks. Afterwards, you would qualify for up to an additional 10 weeks of expanded FMLA if the school closure lasted a full 12 weeks. The last 10 weeks would be paid at 2/3 your regular rate of pay under the expanded FMLA provision. One thing I would like to point out is that if a flexible employee didn't have any children that were affected by the school closures related to COVID-19, that employee would not be entitled to any emergency sick leave or expanded FMLA. The city is not required to pay any flexible or seasonal employees for any time not worked unless they have a child that they need to care for due to their school closing at this time. Question, I am a flex employee. Because of COVID-19, the location that I work is closed and I am not scheduled to work any hours. Can I apply for unemployment benefits even though I am still employed by the city? The answer is yes. If you are an employee who is negatively impacted by COVID-19 because you are sick or otherwise unable to work due to the virus, you should apply for unemployment. The Department of Workforce Services will determine if you are eligible for unemployment benefits. Please visit their website for information on how to apply. Question, I have just returned to work after 6 weeks of FMLA qualifying event. With the new expanded FMLA and emergency sick leave, would I now qualify for an additional 12 weeks of emergency FMLA, including 2 weeks of emergency sick leave, if I want to voluntarily isolate and not come to work? I'm thinking flights to Hawaii are pretty cheap right now. The answer is no. There are several issues with this request. First, to qualify for emergency sick leave, you must have a qualifying reason. Even though we would all like it to be a qualifying reason, cheap flights to Hawaii is not on that list. Second, if you were to have a qualifying reason, such as a doctor advising you to self-quarantine related to COVID-19, you would only qualify for emergency sick leave and not emergency FMLA time. Finally, the only way to qualify for emergency FMLA is if you have a child who you need to care for because their school is closed due to COVID-19 and you do not have the ability to telework. Okay, last question. The governor issued a directive to stay safe, stay home. Does this directive qualify me for emergency sick leave starting April 1st? The answer is no. The governor's directive was not a quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. Therefore, the Stay Safe, Stay Home directive would not qualify you for emergency sick leave. If the federal, state, or local government were to issue a quarantine or isolation order after April 1st, you would qualify for up to 2 weeks of emergency sick leave. And helped you to understand emergency sick leave and the newly expanded FMLA. As always, please reach out to HR should you have any questions or concerns. Let's all help build a better Orem. This has been a City of Orem Walter production.